Well, what more can I say that hasn't already been said about the dear ladies and particularly dear George? At Patrick's memorial, George spoke about the duo's music, and this was very much down to George's consummate skill as a pianist and musician. He arranged virtually all the duo's music into manageable keys that allowed them to perform such a huge repertoire. And his own falsetto blended perfectly with Patrick's, often achieving even higher notes than even Dame Hilda, a truly beautiful sound. But George also proved what a fine actor he was. Look at his iconic Miss Marple in Murder at the Vicarage, Lottie Sherne in Lettuce and Lovage, and both Gwendolen and Miss Prism in The Importance of Being Earnest, not to mention his panto villainesses, Wicked Queen in Snow White, Caraboss in The Sleeping Beauty, and Wicked Sister in Cinderella. And the writing of his own life story and Evadne's Chronicle took autobiography to a new level, ironically only ever achieved by one other, Barry Humphries. George was extremely kind to work with and very generous, albeit a little naughty at times, with everyone he worked with on stage, and I feel very proud to have worked with him. Hinge and Brackett were one of the great variety double acts who rightly deserve that place in the history of variety in this country.
Well, here I am in my studio, come second bedroom, and the latest epic, Our Lovely Days, Our Lovely Ladies, dear ladies, and one particular dear lady, aka George, who obviously very saddened to hear about the death of George, and what a wonderful man he was. Of the two of them, I got on better with George, really. I mean, I adored Patrick, of course, who wouldn't, very funny, but he was a slightly I don't know how to describe it, really. He wasn't as open as George, but I was also mostly very impressed by George's musical knowledge. He could play anything, with or without music, from any sort of style. I remember seeing him accompanying the wonderful drag queen Nikki Young at lunchtime at the Tour Brewers years and years ago, when I had some students with me who had been working with him in Panto. And it ranged from the habanera from Carmen, segued straight into put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. I mean, he really could do everything. Rest in peace, George. The happiest moments of my life were working with Hinge and Brackett, and also not only the reception that they got, but the reception I got from working with them, and I did very well by that as well. So a great man, and a great loss. We're losing them all, I'm afraid. But that's good old Father Time, keeps on rolling along. A bit like Old Man River.
LBC 97.3.
Steve Allen, the Text King.
Hinge and Brackett delighted generations of people, and we are delighted this morning introducing George Logan. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Dear ladies, the fairest of all to see. Dear ladies, you're simply my cup of tea. Your smile full of grace, your ribbons and lace, your elegant flair dazzle my eyes, you're in a class beyond compare. Dear ladies, the years cannot dim your charm. Dear ladies, allow me to take your arm. You're clearly perfection, you're blue cushion for you're as dear as two dear ladies and me. the demigods fall. Nobody's wife this time of life. We've seen it all. We are ladies, a breed that is rare to bend. Our ideals unchangeable come what may. We may seem old-fashioned, but we must agree that we're as willing as two ladies can be. Dear ladies, the years cannot dim your charms. Dear ladies, allow me to take your arm.
What's wrong with mine?
You're my kind of ladies, by golly you are.
Sweet boy.
You're the dearest of dear ladies, by far.
I wonder if he's married.
Actually, if ever you meet Paul Dunford, he is covered in tattoos. There's no he's got tattoos in places we can't discuss. So that's all I'll tell you, but he's an absolute sweetie.
Before we begin, let me start out by saying what an honour it is to have the opportunity to interview you at last, Dr. Hinge.
Yes, dear, it must be. And of course, naturally, I shall make allowances for your air of slight nervousness.
I know you have studiously avoided the spotlight since your retirement many years ago.
Yes, but what can one do? You know, the bonds of fame, you know. Even here in rural France, la France profonde, as we say, somehow or other, the spotlight of fame continues to track me down.
But that was inevitable, wouldn't you agree, given the fact that you're about to make a return to the stage after an absence of what is it, 14, 15 years?
Maybe several years, let's say, dear. No need for over-precision. Yes, I shall be appearing in November in the Dowager's Oyster. Just a few performances, of course. A toe in the water, so to speak. I mean, at my age.
Yes, Dr. Hinge, that was one point I wanted to clarify. There seems to be some confusion as to your exact age. May I make so bold as to inquire just how old you are?
No.
No, of course not. One should never ask a lady her age.
Indeed.
Well, in that case, let's talk about the Dowager's Oyster.
Yes, let's do that, shall we?
How did you come to be involved in the project?
Well, that's quite a story. I was contacted by email. I do like to keep up with modern trends, you know, by a young chap called Louis Mander, a composer, by all accounts, though I must say I'd never actually heard of him. And he asked me if I would be interested in appearing in a little theatrical romp for which he had composed the music, the Dowager's Oyster by name. Well, of course, the first thing I did was to Google him. One can't be too careful these days, can one? The world teems with unsavoury and disreputable people, it seems to me. I mean, who knows? He could have been after who knows what.
For example?
Well, use your imagination, dear. Luckily, I was able to ascertain that this Louis Mander was exactly who and what he claimed to be, a composer. A lovely violin sonata of his on YouTube. I listened to that. So the first thing I did was to email him back and say, could he let me have a copy of the score? One has to be so wary. Modern music is full of the most frightful things these days, and I would not wish to be associated with anything of that nature. Luckily, on perusing the score, I discovered Mr. Mander's music was quite delightful. Oh, the occasional harmonic asperity, as one would expect, but nothing to frighten the horses. Tuneful, melodious, memorable. So I thought it would be fun to do. So indeed, as it happens, I was unfortunately unable to make the premiere of the work in August, but we have arranged a second run in November, and I shall be travelling over to the UK to rehearse and perform the role.
Of course, Mr. Mander is a comparatively young man. Isn't that so?
Well, yes, he's certainly a few years younger than me.
31, I believe.
So I'm told.
Is it true, Dr. Hinge, that you are actually, to some extent, the inspiration for the character of the Dowager?
Me? Oh, no, not at all, not at all. No, her modesty forbids. No, I think the situation was that Mr. Mander realised that what he required was the input of an experienced and older woman to take him firmly in hand and to translate his inspiration to the stage. someone with the skills and experience to recreate this indomitable and intriguing character, the Dowager.
Yes. Tell me something about the character of the Dowager.
Oh, she's quite something, the Dowager, yes, a redoubtable figure. An aristocrat, of course, indeed something of a snob, a bit of a bully occasionally, rude, abrupt, aggressive, domineering, a thoroughly difficult woman.
You were typecast then?
I beg your pardon?
Being an aristocrat yourself, I mean.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, I think you may be confusing me with my former colleague and lifelong friend, Dame Hilda Brackett. She was indeed from an aristocratic background, or so she always claimed. I must say, I saw very few signs of it personally.
Now, if we may, move on to another topic. I believe you've been involved in some rewriting for the show. Is that correct?
No, not personally, dear, not personally. I would never dare to paddle in literary waters. No, I asked a very dear friend of mine, a well-known authoress, Miss Gina G. Glorio, if she could help out in that area, and she was happy to oblige. She's quite well regarded, you know, Gina. She wrote that thing, The Wind in My Withers. Read it, have you?
I know. I can't say I...
Oh, you should. Magnificent rolling prose. And wonderful muscular calves, dear Gina.
Yes. I was wondering, Dr. Hinge, do you involve yourself in social media at all? Because this is where this interview will appear.
Well, yes, of course I do, dear. Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on them all. Oh, and Bookface too, of course. Love Bookface.
Facebook?
Yes, that's the one.
As it happens, my wife is something of a Facebook addict. I have to drag her away from the computer sometimes.
Do you twat her?
Well, no, I've never actually had to.
Oh, you should. I'm at it constantly myself. And the young chap who wrote the piece, Louis Mander, I mentioned his name earlier, sweet boy, he and I are in constant contact that way. I was on to him just this morning. In fact, as we speak, I'm awaiting his reaction to my twat. I do hope he gives me a like.
I'm sure he wouldn't dare do otherwise, Dr. Hinge. Now, I think we've covered everything pretty thoroughly. I was wondering if, just before we bring the interview to a close, you might consider giving us a brief excerpt from The Dowager's Oyster.
Oh, well, I would be delighted, naturally. Well, of course, you must appreciate I'm still in the process of learning the role. But here's a brief snippet from a scene between the Dowager and her maid Genevieve. Naturally, I shall have to sing Genevieve's lines too, as she isn't here, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense without them. Of course, you'll have to pardon the accent. I'm not accustomed to playing servants. So come with me, it's time to spy, for you and I to peep and pry. We stroll around in a casual way, creating no suspicious display. So follow me, let's have no delay. My lady, I'm not so sure. This is a game I don't care for. I'm not listening. Yes, you have, I'm sure of that. I've seen you watch us bicker and shade. Now follow me, and when I quote, take this paper and make note. Let's head over to the Grimsig Shirley and listen in to what they have to say.
before lights glow. I'll hold you close and never let you go. Your eyes will tell me what I want to know. When you come home, that's all. We'll gather lilacs in the spring again, and walk together down an English lane, until our hearts have learned to sing again. When you come home once more, and in the evening by the firelight's glow, and never let you go. Your eyes will tell me what I want to know. When you come home 2, 3, 4 once like that anymore. My first cousin, General Perry, who adored young Ellen Terry, once ordered at the old Lyceum stage door the whole blinking Bow Street man to escort her down the Strand. They don't make them like that anymore. You must think that I am hopelessly nostalgic. Forgive me, but perhaps one day you'll see that each day as you grow older and the world's a little colder, and it's lost the magic that it held